You're watching Old and Broke. Let's go back to the beginning, not just of a country, but of a radical idea that freedom and finance must go hand in hand. Our founding fathers weren't just idealists. They were witnesses to economic disaster. They watched the continental dollar collapse into worthless paper. So worthless, people had a phrase for it: not worth a continental. That collapse left scars, deep ones. So when they built America, they didn't just draft laws, they designed limits. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says it loud and clear: no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Why? Because they knew what happens when money is backed by nothing, when trust replaces truth. James Madison warned that paper money would lead to instability, corruption, and collapse. Thomas Jefferson feared a future where politicians print promises instead of honoring value. To them, sound money wasn't economics. It was self-defense. They didn't trust government, they trusted gold. Because gold doesn't lie and it doesn't rust. It doesn't bend to lobbyists or political moods. Gold is truth in a vault. And the gold standard? That was our firewall. A shield against tyranny. A system rooted in reality. And for a long time, it worked. It kept spending in check. It kept inflation in its cage. And it protected the one thing no government should ever be allowed to destroy: the value of your labor. Then came 1933. The Great Depression was raging, and in the chaos came a command: Executive Order 6102, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Overnight, it became illegal for Americans to own gold. Not just bars, not just bullion, but coins, certificates, even family heirlooms. You had to turn it all in, or face 10 years in prison, and a fine worth $180,000 today. Think about that. The government made your money, your savings, your legacy a crime. They said it was to stop hoarding, to stabilize the economy. But what it really did was centralize the gold supply and strip everyday Americans of financial sovereignty. Then came the twist. Once the gold was safely locked away in government vaults, they revalued it from $20.67 an ounce to $35, a 70% jump overnight. If a private citizen did that, we'd call it fraud. But when the government does it, they call it policy. John Adams warned us: the moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the laws of God, anarchy and tyranny commence. That wasn't just a policy shift. That was a violation of liberty, a lesson in how fast freedom vanishes. When fear gives power a blank check. And if it happened once, it can happen again. Then came 1971, a moment that changed everything, but barely made a ripple on the surface. President Richard Nixon appears on national television. Calm voice, suit and tie, but the words: a financial earthquake. I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Temporarily, it was forever. That decision killed the Bretton Woods system. And with it, the final link between the dollar and reality. No more gold backing, no more convertibility, just paper, backed by nothing but trust in politicians and central bankers. Nixon said it was to fight inflation, to protect the dollar, to balance trade. But what we got instead was chaos. Welcome to the age of fiat currency, where money is created with keystrokes, where debt is endless, and where every dollar printed quietly steals value from the one in your wallet. The 1970s? They brought stagflation, something economists once thought impossible. Inflation skyrocketed, growth stagnated, the dollar's purchasing power collapsed. We gave up a system built on discipline and traded it for one built on political convenience. Nixon didn't just close the gold window, he ripped the anchor off our currency and opened the floodgates to debt, inflation, and reckless monetary policy. And we've been drifting ever since. So, is it time to go back? Maybe not to the 1800s, not to horse-drawn carriages and gold coins in leather pouches. But maybe it's time to move forward with the wisdom and principles we left behind. Because this isn't about nostalgia. It's about restraint. It's about rules. It's about trust in a system that no longer deserves it. The gold standard wasn't perfect, but it forced our leaders to live within their means, to balance budgets, to weigh every dollar they spent, and in return, we got decades of stability, low inflation, and a middle class that could afford homes, raise families, and retire with dignity. So what does gold offer today? Fiscal discipline. Gold doesn't print itself, it demands responsibility. Inflation control. When money is tied to something real, you can't just dilute it endlessly. Restore trust. Because unlike fiat promises, gold is apolitical, neutral, timeless. Could it limit flexibility? Yes. But look at the alternative. We've had flexibility for 50 years. And what did we get? A dollar that buys less every year. A debt we'll never repay. A system that punishes savers and rewards speculators. Fiat money unleashed recklessness. Gold puts the brakes on that madness. It forces the hard choices, the adult conversations, the honesty we've been avoiding. In a world built on easy money, returning to gold may feel radical. But maybe radical is what we need. Not because gold is magic, but because truth has weight. And gold reminds us of that. It's not about going backward, it's about anchoring the future to something real. Here we are, 2025, and gold just passed $3,200 an ounce. Why? Because people are finally waking up. They're looking around at the debt, the inflation, the instability, and they're asking one simple question. What still holds value? Gold doesn't need hype. It doesn't need a sales pitch. It doesn't crash because some hedge fund hit the wrong key. No flashy apps, no backdoors, no algorithmic oops. Gold just is real, tangible, scarce, forged in stars, held in vaults, and trusted for 5,000 years. You can't click it into existence. You can't inflate it with policy, and you can't fake its weight in your hand. In times of chaos, gold is order. In a system built on trust, gold is truth. In an era of digital illusion, gold is reality you can hold. This isn't about being old-fashioned. This is about being anchored. Because gold doesn't rot, it doesn't rust, it doesn't vanish when the market closes or the power goes out. It's not old, it's timeless. From ancient empires to modern central banks, from dusty vaults to digital charts, gold has survived every collapse, every regime, every reset. So ask yourself, if gold has outlived kings, currencies, and entire civilizations, what does that tell you? It tells you this: gold still matters because truth still matters. And when the music stops and the system resets, you'll want to be holding something real. Let's get practical. This isn't just about history. This isn't about sentiment. This is about solutions. What could a gold standard actually fix? It could enforce budget limits. No more trillion-dollar deficits. No more blank checks from Congress. Every dollar spent would have to be earned or backed. It could stop runaway printing. No more money created out of thin air. No more silent tax on your savings through inflation. It could protect your purchasing power. Your labor, your time would hold its value. What you earn today would still be worth something tomorrow. It could rebuild trust, not in politicians, but in the money itself, in the system, in the future. Critics say a gold standard is too restrictive, too rigid, too limiting. But let's be honest, isn't that exactly what we need? Look around. We've had 50 years of flexibility, and all it brought us was $34 trillion in debt, unaffordable housing, and savings that melt like ice. Restriction isn't the problem, it's the solution. Discipline is not a bug, it's a feature. Because without restraint, there is no accountability. Without limits, there is no value. And without value, there is no trust. We've built a monetary system like a car with no brakes, and we're surprised it's spiraling out of control. A gold standard doesn't eliminate innovation. It doesn't kill capitalism. It simply says, if you want to grow, do it the right way, do it honestly, do it sustainably. In a world where everything feels fake, gold brings back the real. It's not about going backward, it's about putting guardrails back on the road. Before we go off the cliff, let's pull back the curtain. This isn't just about savings accounts. This isn't just about inflation or retirement portfolios. This is about power, sovereignty, survival. Because while the US plays games with debt ceilings and inflation targets, foreign central banks are playing a different game entirely. They're buying gold, quietly, relentlessly. China, Russia, India, Kazakhstan. Even smaller economies are stockpiling gold like it's oxygen. Why? Because they know what we've forgotten. Fiat is fragile. Confidence can collapse overnight. Empires don't fall from bullets alone. They fall when their money dies. These nations aren't waiting for a collapse. They're preparing for a reset. And what is gold in that world? It's not a hedge. It's a weapon, a shield, a strategic asset more powerful than any missile or treaty. If the US loses control of its currency, we don't just lose dollars. We lose leverage. We lose negotiating power. We lose global influence. The dollar is the backbone of our military dominance, our trade supremacy, our diplomatic clout. But a currency backed by nothing is a throne built on sand. Gold isn't just finance, it's national defense, it's monetary sovereignty. Because the moment our enemies don't need our dollars, they won't fear our power. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a chessboard. And right now, we're losing pieces. Returning to sound money isn't just economic reform, it's a strategic imperative. Because in the next war, gold may matter more than guns. Now, we stand at a fork in the road, and the choice before us couldn't be clearer or more dangerous. Path 1, the road we're on. The road of printing, presses, and political promises. More inflation, more debt, more digital dollars. Controlled not by people, but by policymakers. Trackable, programmable, disposable. A future where money becomes surveillance, where saving becomes impossible, and where independence fades into dependency. That's the path of control, of convenience, of collapse. But there's another road. Path 2, the road back to sound money. Not backward, but back to principles. Back to real value. Back to a system where money can't be printed into oblivion. A future where your savings hold their worth. Inflation is restrained, not weaponized. And your financial freedom belongs to you, not the state. This path demands honesty. It demands discipline. It demands we anchor our currency to something real. Something that can't be manipulated by headlines or elections. Gold, not because it's old, but because it's true. We abandoned it once. We told ourselves it was outdated, inefficient, unnecessary. And what did we get in return? A broken system, a shrinking middle class, and a future being printed into pieces? We don't have to make that mistake again, because the clock is still ticking. The reset is coming, and at this fork in the road, we still have time to choose right. The cracks are already here. You can feel them. You can see them. Just like 1933, when the government seized the people's gold. Just like 1971, when Nixon cut the cord and unleashed inflation. Just like 2008, when the system collapsed under its own weight. But this time, it's different. Because this time, we know what's coming. We're not blind. We're not powerless. This time, we have a choice. We can ignore the warnings. Keep printing. Keep spending. Keep hoping the music won't stop. Or dash. We can restore what was lost. We can protect what still remains. We can rebuild a system grounded in truth, not trust. We can choose discipline over debt, stability over speculation, sound money over silent theft. We can choose gold before the next collapse forces it on us. Because here's the truth. Gold doesn't change. It never has. It doesn't bend to politics. It doesn't vanish in a crash. It doesn't care who's in power. Gold endures, and when everything else breaks, gold remains. The only thing that ever changes is our willingness to return to it. So don't wait for collapse. Don't wait for headlines. Don't wait for someone to save you. Choose real money. Choose freedom. Choose resilience. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Share this message. Wake others up. And above all, stay informed, stay resilient, stay golden. You're watching Old and Broke. We don't predict the future, we just pay attention. Hit like, hit subscribe, stay